In 1965, American cars were all muscle and metal, but dangerously behind on safety. The Ford Falcon, though popular, crumpled under pressure with barely any crash protection. Seat belts were optional, dashboards were steel, and sharp chrome trim could turn deadly in a wreck. These cars looked good, but driving them was a real gamble. Dear viewers, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your support. Number 5. Why the 1965 Oldsmobile Cutlass was dangerous. Built on a body-on-frame chassis with limited engineering for crash impact. No energy-absorbing front or rear structures. In crashes, the force was transmitted directly to the occupants. Doors were not reinforced, making side impacts especially hazardous. Despite its coupe and convertible variants looking sleek and low, they lacked structural support in the event of a rollover. The roof pillars were thin, and convertible models offered virtually zero rollover safety, a serious risk in crashes or loss of control situations. The dashboard was a hard, painted metal panel with steel knobs, toggle switches, and chrome accents. In a crash, occupants could be impaled or severely injured by these components. No collapsible steering column. A frontal collision could push the column directly into the driver. Seat belts were often optional, and when present, were lap belts only. No headrests, no airbags, and no padded dash or upper trim made any impact, even at moderate speeds, potentially fatal. Crash test data of the time showed high head, chest, and abdominal injury risk in frontal crashes. While not a full-fledged muscle car, the 65 Cutlass offered V8 options that delivered decent horsepower, especially with the 330 cubic-inch Jetfire rocket engine. This power, combined with drum brakes and basic suspension, made it hard to control its speed or stop quickly, increasing accident risk. Safety. Summary: risk factor, danger level, crash resistance, rollover safety, interior design hazards, braking control. The 1965 Oldsmobile Cutlass was a stylish mid-range car that laid the foundation for Oldsmobile's later sales dominance. But like many cars of its era, it offered almost no protection in the event of a crash. Its appealing design and V8 power masked serious flaws in structural integrity, occupant safety, and crash survivability. Number 4. Why the 1965 Chrysler 300 was dangerous. Massive speed, minimal safety. The Chrysler 300 came with big block V8 engines up to 413 cubic inches, delivering serious highway speed. However, no structural safety systems were in place to handle crashes at the speeds it could achieve. Many drivers pushed these cars hard, without the benefit of modern tires, brakes, or suspension geometry, making loss of control more likely. Crash tests and accident reports showed that the roof structure crumpled dangerously in rollover crashes. A heavy car with a high center of gravity and soft suspension made rollovers more likely in evasive maneuvers or off-road loss of control. Roof pillars were not reinforced, and convertibles had no roll bars or rear bulkhead bracing. Chrysler still used body-on-frame or semi-unibody designs that transferred crash forces into the cabin. No crumple zones, airbags, or interior padding. Dashboard was metal with chrome trim and pointed knobs, and steering columns were non-collapsible. Lap belts were optional or dealer-installed. No shoulder belts, no headrests, and no side impact protection meant injuries in even moderate speed crashes were severe. Occupant ejection during rollovers was common due to lack of seatbelt use and poor door integrity. Summary of dangers: risk area, danger level, rollover protection, frontal crash resistance, interior safety, speed versus handling balance. The 1965 Chrysler 300 was a beautiful brute, but its high-speed capability was never matched by its crash-worthiness. In rollovers, it literally collapsed on its occupants, and in front-end impacts, the car offered little protection from its own interior. Like many cars of its time, It prioritized style and power far above safety, a dangerous combination for an era with rising highway speeds. Number 3. Why the 1965 Dodge Monaco was dangerous. High power, low control. Offered with large displacement, V8s like the 383 and 420 wedge, it had massive horsepower for its time. However, handling and braking systems were not built to match the performance. Drum brakes all around, prone to fade during repeated stops. Soft suspension caused body roll in corners and instability at speed. The Monaco's long wheelbase and softly tuned suspension made it feel floaty and disconnected at high speeds. When pushed, especially in emergency maneuvers or fast turns, it was prone to oversteer or understeer. Loss of rear traction. Rollover on uneven terrain or tight corners. Unlike performance cars of later decades, it had no traction control, limited tire grip, and no anti-roll bar tuning for aggressive driving. Crashworthiness deficiencies, like most cars of the mid-1960s, it lacked crumple zones, collapsible steering column, reinforced roof structure, seatbelt pretensioners or shoulder restraints. The metal dashboard, pointed knobs, and hard interior surfaces meant high injury risk in a collision. Structural weaknesses. Side impacts were especially dangerous. Thin door panels offered little protection. Doors could pop open in a crash due to weak latches. In a frontal crash, the steering column often impaled the driver, a common problem in the pre-airbag era. Summary of dangers, safety category, risk level, high-speed handling, braking reliability, crash protection, interior safety. Final verdict, the 1965 Dodge Monaco combined a fast engine with slow reflexes. It was designed for straight-line cruising, not cornering or evasive maneuvers. When drivers pushed it too hard, tempted by the muscle under the hood, the car's soft suspension, poor weight distribution, and outdated crash design often turned an avoidable situation into a fatal one. Number 2. Why the 1965 Ford Thunderbird was dangerous. Power plus weight equals momentum problem. The T-Bird came with a 390 cubic inch V8, or optional 428, producing big horsepower and torque. But at over 4,300 pounds, it was a heavy car with underpowered drum brakes. Under panic braking, it would nosedive severely, throwing weight forward and compromising control. No seatbelts standard. Like most cars of its era, seatbelts were optional, and few buyers installed them. Even with them, no shoulder belts were available, and no head restraints meant a high risk of whiplash or ejection in a crash. Steering column equals spear. The Thunderbird used a solid, non-collapsible steering shaft. In frontal crashes, the column would often impale the driver's chest or compress into the ribcage due to the lack of collapse zones. This was a common fatal injury in 1960s. Cars without collapsible columns, mandated starting in 1968. Handling woes. Despite being marketed as a sporty car, the 1965 Thunderbird handled more like a boat. Slow, heavy steering, significant body roll, unpredictable cornering at speed. It was easy to lose control during evasive maneuvers, especially on wet roads. Interior dangers. The dashboard was made of metal with hard edges, and switches were protruding chrome knobs. In a crash, even a restrained occupant could suffer serious internal injuries from contact with interior surfaces. Summary of dangers, safety category. Risk level, braking behavior, crash protection, steering hazard, handling response. Interior safety. The 1965 Ford Thunderbird was more show than go when it came to safety. Its unbalanced weight, poor braking behavior, and rigid steering column made it particularly lethal in frontal crashes. Drivers expecting muscle car handling were often shocked by how the car behaved in an emergency. It was a personal luxury coupe, but not a safe one. Number 1. Why the 1965 Studebaker Daytona was dangerous. outdated platform. No crash engineering. The Daytona was based on a platform that dated back to the 1860s, early 1960s, and evolved from even older post-war designs. It lacked any crumple zones, energy-absorbing structures, or reinforced body architecture. By 1965, automakers like GM and Ford were beginning to incorporate basic crash safety features. Studebaker lagged far behind. Thin steel, weak frame. The body panels were lightweight and thin, which reduced cost and weight, but also offered little resistance in collisions. In a side impact crash, there was almost nothing between the occupant and the intruding vehicle. Even minor crashes could result in severe cabin deformation. Seatbelts were optional and rarely installed by buyers. There were no padded dashboards, collapsible steering columns, or recessed interior components, all of which were becoming safety priorities in other manufacturers' cars by then. Occupants could be thrown into sharp dashboard edges or the rigid steering wheel. Poor handling at speed. While the Daytona could be optioned with a V8, the suspension and chassis were not up to the task of managing power at higher speeds. Poor weight distribution and soft shocks led to instability in emergency maneuvers. The doors had no side impact reinforcement and were known to fly open during collisions or rollover events. This significantly increased the risk of ejection or crushing injuries. Safety category, risk level, crash protection, side impact resistance, interior safety, braking, handling, structural integrity. Final verdict, the 1965 Studebaker Daytona was built during the final days of a struggling automaker and shows it in terms of safety. With no crash engineering, weak materials, and outdated design, it offered very little protection to occupants and performed poorly in real-world collisions. It was a car stuck in the past at a time when safety expectations were rapidly evolving.